Now is the time in the service where we take an offering. We know it is the gifts of all that help us to support our ability to thrive and to gather. For those attending in person, we will pass the collection plate. Please use the envelope you find in the pew, write your name, and indicate if your offering is part of your pledge or if it is a donation. For those online, links and instructions will be posted in the chat. You can mail us a check or donate through the PayPal giving page on our website. Please give as generously as you can. Our offerings will be gratefully received. In the offertory music, Instrument of Peace by Greg Gilpin. we have the offertory hymn. Please join us in singing hymn 399, Vine and Fig Tree, in your great hymnal. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll begin with Sarah Rachel singing in Hebrew.
Now is a time in our service for some centering down, some centering words, prayer, meditation, contemplation, then a reflection. I want to bring in the words of the poet and writer Maya Angelou, who said that history, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes, the day breaking before you. Give birth again to the dream, she implores. Spirit of life and love, bigger than the universe, smaller than a grain of sand, with us in the morning fog, in the sound of birds, in the commitment to love and justice. Be with us today and every day as we seek to grow in compassion, to be present to one another, and to do what we can to bring love and compassion and to receive love and compassion. We ask this in peace, blessing, and harmony. May it be so. I find healing and hope coming together. I find healing and hope when people come into a shared room. I find healing and hope, especially in these difficult times where people resist the temptation to withdraw from connection. We are in a time where it is easy, the temptation to just disconnect, make our lives smaller and more private, to spend time on our phones or watching TV, fearful of our neighbors, uncertain of what is around us. But if we are to grow in love and hope and compassion and healing, perhaps we should heed the words of an old poet from over 800 years ago, the Persian poet, the Turkish poet, Jalal al-Din Rumi, who said, "Come again, return, whoever you are, whether you are religious or a heretic or a pagan. Even if you promised 100 times and 100 times you broke your promise, return. The door, this door is not the door of hopelessness and frustration. This door is open for everybody. Come as you are." That's a voice from a different time. But to me, it's resonating in my heart and mind because we are in a time where so many of the ancient religions have a series of holidays that invite us into fasting and almsgiving and charity. And this International Women's Day, as we gather as one community among millions around the world where people are trying to lift up the struggle for love, hope, and justice, we recall the ancient seasons of Ramadan, Lent, the just past holiday of Purim, these times where people mark space and place to be a little different, to purposely act a little different than we do in other days and other moments and other times. I find this particularly important in a moment where there is so much anger, organized violence, cruelty, suspicion, where there is a lot of money going into a lot of fear. I would say one of the gifts of these ancient traditions is that they remind us that the sun keeps rising. There is a rhythm to the circle of life and the earth, and that if we are, in Sarah Tanaka's words, mindful and responsible, we can make space to be present with one another and perhaps to tell some new stories. Tyrone Davis, who's a wonderful colleague, reminded me last week, the job of religion is not to say all is well when all is not well. The job of religion is to be honest. All is not well. Let us explore together how to respond in line with our values. We are not called to escape the world, but to love the world, to bear witness to the beautiful sounds of birds around us at the same time that our hearts are breaking for the violence that takes place every day in this city. We are invited to consider how we can be different from our everyday practices and say, even as we're going about work, even as we're going to school, even as we're just preparing dinner, is there a way we can be more attuned to who and what and where we are? Saif Ansari, who's an attorney and a self-described Muslim atheist, says, even though I'm an atheist, I still practice fasting. He said, for me, I'm not trying to criticize where I came from. I don't just reject everything I was taught wholesale or commit it to the flames. I try to adapt it to my own purposes. We're all on a journey, he says. In another instance, Ruth Megger, who grew up in a mixed faith household, she said, I had a very devout Muslim father and a very devout Catholic mother, and I am a very devout atheist. But she said she's still wrestling with and struggling with the lessons they both taught her about Lent and Ramadan, and that there's still an invitation to act a little differently. She says, one of the biggest practices of the Ramadan I was taught, besides fasting, is charity. She said, you're saving money by not eating 2 meals a day, not to mention the snacks and coffees. It's like, but we don't keep the money for ourselves. We use it to give it back to our neighbors in need. It's an act of doing less for the self to connect more with the community. It's a season to remind us all, and even our neighbors if we're not practicing, but to learn from our neighbors, that the sacrifices we make can be connected to a greater struggle for love and justice. Now, some critics say, you can't, if you're not a believer, you shouldn't follow these practices. Tom Flynn of the Council for Secular Humanism was a strong critic of all clergy and forms of religion, and he said, just because religion is well behaved doesn't mean it can't bite. But people who are wrestling with the traditions and saying, even if I don't believe anything, there's still something beautiful in this I have to wrestle with. I might not subscribe to every tenet of the creed. I might not pay attention to every quotation from this sacred text, but there's something in this collective life, commitment to one another, invitation to act differently than I normally would, that I have to pay attention to if I'm deeply involved in this world. Reverend Evan Carvel-Zener, who is a leader in our national movement, has written, "I'm noticing new levels of frayed nerves and congregational tension." They write, "We are all exhausted, and we're doing our absolute best. And each of our families perhaps has more needs than any one of us can fill. We feel that need for more connection, more joy, more singing, more togetherness. And sometimes when we get angry in our congregations, it covers other emotions and unmet needs." Reverend Zima responds, "There's no easy answer to this hard time. But perhaps, just like in the pandemic, we find easy, low-effort ways to just get people in the same room, to listen, to recognize the hardships that we're carrying, and realize sometimes these arguments, they're not actually about you. They're about the harms in the world. That we steward and protect our energy. That we find joyful ways to laugh together." When I read that by Reverend Zemer, I felt inspired because it reminds me that even when we come together in sanctuary, even when we gather in our congregational life, we will have conflict. We are people. Walking through that door that Rumi invites us into doesn't mean that suddenly we have become whole and perfect. We are all on a journey of growth, and we've committed to grow together. And sometimes there are aches and pains, but in this world that is aching so much, what a glorious thing that people come into the same room and say, "I might not have it figured all out. I might not know everything, but I know that love is important. And I hear that you believe that too. And perhaps we can learn from each other in our pursuit of this vision and quest and journey." Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd has said, "The world does not need another place for like-minded people to hang out and fight about who's in charge. The world does need a place where you or I are called to be alive. What the world needs is a movement like ours to step more fully into our higher calling." She says, "To serve as an instrument of encounter with one another, with the holy, and with the world, so that we might love more fully and speak more truly and serve with greater efficacy." So in this unfolding world, right now, on this island, there are families that desperately need to know that open and flexible spirituality exists. There are people on this island right now who need to know there are amazing civic groups partnering and nurturing the spirit of Harriet Tubman in our world today. There are people who need to know that there are alternatives to faith that are not just about hierarchy and control, but about possibility. In 2026, right now in the Staten Island Mall, someone is walking around angry about the state of the world and not sure what to do about it, and feeling really lonely and really angry. How can we show up? How can we show up to meet them? In this season of renewal, how can we spread our message of love and possibility? Many years ago, the minister Ogden von Voigt from Chicago wrote a gorgeous prayer, one I thought of this morning. "Before the wonders of life, we acknowledge the failures to see and to revere. Before the sanctities of life, we are ashamed of our disrespects and indignities. Before the gifts of life, we own that we have made a choice at times of lesser goods. And here today we seek the gifts of the Spirit. Before the heroisms of life, we would be enlarged to new devotion." When I think about the misty fog that surrounds St. George, when I pay attention to these trees in this glorious neighborhood, I think about all the miracles that surround us, all the journeys that we are able to participate in our everyday encounters. And there is so much to be angry about, and so much harm and violence and suffering and hunger in this world, all the way from Tehran to Tottenville, from Buffalo to Gaza. from right here to Brooklyn. And amidst so much pain, it is more important than ever to take a risk and gather in a space and say, we might not agree about everything, but we're committed to pursuing love and hope and possibility. Muhammad Iqbal said, I am devoted to this vision. The journey of love is a long journey. May we be devoted to that vision and transformed by the power of love. May it be so. Amen.
Our closing hymn. Please join us in singing hymn 298, Wake Now My Senses, in your gray hymnal. Please stand as you are able. I invite you to join me in extinguishing our chalice. You can find the affirmation in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. For these we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And then in the middle of the book of Exodus, Moses said, "You have said to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know who you will send with them. You have said, I know you by name. You have also found grace in my sight." And then it continues that it's not just about Moses, but the whole people. The spirit of love is not just about lifting up one person, but all the people, the mixed multitude. And as we sang one day, may everyone beneath every vine and fig tree be at peace and unafraid. Go in peace. May it be so.
And now, before the prelude and before hospitality, and while you're still seated, we have an important announcement for you. Our Social Justice Committee is organizing our participation in the upcoming No Kings Rally and March on Saturday, March 28th. Staten Island turned out in October for No Kings in numbers of about 2,000, according to the NYPD count. Pretty impressive. Taking our inspiration from the masses of peaceful demonstrators marching in the streets of Minneapolis, we would like to think that we can double our previous number this time. But it will take all of us who love our country and all of us who love our democracy to hit that goal. So please plan to show up at the rallying point at the top of the hill on the west side of Clove Lakes Park, which is at Victory Boulevard and Royal Oak. And bring family and friends. And you know that person wandering around in the mall that feels so bad, but they don't know what to do? That might be your neighbor. You know, it might be a casual acquaintance. If just a little something comes up in the conversation, you can always say, hey, come with me. I'm going to do this thing. There are going to be a lot of us there. So, volunteers are also needed. So if you would like to sign up for something, you can talk to Juliette Moore or Sally Jones or Chris Johnson. There's a list of volunteer opportunities, and you can sign up for any activity where you think your talents and energy would be best served. So we're putting it into your hands, your laps, onto your shoulders to pick up the flag and run with it. Yes, what time? At 1 o'clock. And the whole thing will extend probably from 1 until around 3, presumably, yeah. And for people who are not exactly familiar with Royal Oak, it's that street lined with Royal Oaks at the very top part of the Clove Lakes Park. And then I think there's a little diagonal cross to Little Clove, is it called, Chris? I don't know what they... Okay, there you go. Little Clove Road. So it's up in that, top of the park area. You'll see the people there, because we'll all be there. Okay, so thank you so much, and
just one last, before the postlude, I just want to say one more time thank you to the Harriet Tubman Purple Hat Society, and I'd like to invite President Lorraine forward.
Oh my, okay, thank you.
so ends our service. Join us for hospitality.